Welcome to Mommy Needs a Minute. I'm your host, Kaitlin Morris, mom, entrepreneur, and just a fellow woman learning how to navigate the messy, beautiful collision of motherhood and ambition. Now, this isn't a space for perfect answers. This is a space for honest conversations, for quiet reflections, and for gentle reminders that you are allowed to take a breath, to reclaim your rhythm, and to show up as your full self, even in the middle of the chaos. So go ahead, pour yourself a cup of coffee. Let's take a nice big, deep breath, and let's take this minute together. Today, we're going to dive into missing who we used to be before we became moms. And I know personally, I've had a lot of moments where that version of me that I was before I had children is dramatically different than the version of me now. I've had a lot of deep conversations with other moms, with other business owners, with my spouse about questioning whether have I lost my identity of who I was or who I am, or is this more of a shift into something different? And I feel that me personally, I have really settled on this concept of this being my becoming era. You'll see women talk about living in their soft girl era, and we all have our own interpretations of what soft girl era means. But for me, this is very much not a soft girl era. This is a becoming era. It's becoming someone different, becoming someone new, becoming this new version of who I am as a person. And if you're listening to this, I'm betting that you have had these same thoughts. We try not to compare. I don't want to compare this current version of me to different versions of me who had completely different responsibilities, completely different roles, completely different just overall situations. I have to make sure that I am not comparing. Personally, I think some of my biggest ones are that me before children was an avid reader, like reading all the time. And I have definitely found that in these first 2.5 years of motherhood, I'm still in the very beginning of it. And reading can be very challenged when your littles are very little. And I keep reminding myself that this is not just no longer me. I am still a very avid reader. I am still that person. This current version of me doesn't have a lot of opportunities for reading, but it doesn't mean that version of me is gone. I like to think of her just temporarily taking a back seat, but she will return. We need to look into, are we taking time to really dive into discovering who we are now and not feeling like we've really lost ourselves? We can often get caught up with taking care of everyone else in this new role and making sure everyone else is thriving. And the version of who we used to be almost trickles away if we aren't intentional and if we aren't just diligently keeping up with making sure that this new version of ourselves is defined. That's a big one of who am I now? And is this forever me, or is this just a short version of me? Am I taking care of this version of myself? Am I making time for this version of myself? Am I accepting this version of myself? That's one that I definitely struggle with, of accepting the version of myself while I am in it. I do a great job of accepting myself in reflection. So looking back to who I was 5 years ago, I'm so proud of her and I love her. But then I think, when I was in those moments, did I have those exact same thoughts? When we are in the present, are we taking time to appreciate who we are right now and all the roles we are fulfilling? And while this mom version of where we are right now, the mompreneur, might not be the most balanced, might not be the most organized, and might not reflect a completely accurate version of who we are when we are alone, it still doesn't mean that this version of us can't be validated and that this version of us isn't important. We really need to explore, how are we defining this new version of ourselves? Are we giving ourselves time to really reflect on that? And if you're struggling with this, I 100% get it. And it's okay to struggle with this. You're literally redefining who you are. That is not some small task. And it's not some task meant to be brushed aside. We need to prioritize this and to really put ourselves forward. It's also okay to grieve who we used to be. I have moments where I grieve the times when I could just sit down and play video games for 3 hours uninterrupted on a Saturday morning. That version of me loved doing that. Current version of me not only doesn't have the capability with time, but also wouldn't choose that because my priorities have shifted. My responsibilities have shifted. And even if I had the time and the capability, I would still choose to do a different activity than that at this current phase. But it's okay that I miss that. I do miss it. She was so fun. And current version of me is still just as fun. It's just a different version. So allow yourself those moments where you do grieve these old versions of yourself. I grieve the version who had all this time to read books and frequently did read books. I grieve the version who played a lot of video games. I grieve the version of myself who was able to garden more strategically. But when it comes to missing who we used to be, for me personally, the biggest things have been defining who this new version is. Who is she? Who am I right now? And how long am I this version? I might not know the answer, but it's important to take time to redefine who you currently are in this role, to take time to grieve who you used to be. That is totally fine and totally acceptable and totally understandable. And then to take time to focus on your growth. Who are you becoming? What is coming next? And like I said, we might not know the answers, but I think a lot of us find that when we're in this motherhood state, it's hard to focus on our goals. It's hard to focus on our own growth. But if you intentionally take time to sit down and really consider, how am I growing? Who am I growing into? Am I moving in the direction that lines up with my goals? If you haven't taken time for that, that leads us right into our action step for this episode. I want you to take a minute, as always, with every episode, and we are going to reflect. And that could be through journaling. You can just sit in thought with yourself if you're not into journaling, or that could be conversation. Find a friend to have these conversations with. I want you to think about, what part or version of your old self do you miss the most and why? I told you a few of my very basic ones. I have many, many more. But what part of you and your old version do you find that you miss or grieve the most? And if you are not taking time to grieve that version of yourself, I challenge you to allow that to occur. Take time to think about how you used to be this version and that it's okay to miss that. Take time to focus on your growth. We struggle with this. We put everybody else first. But even in this season where we are redefining, who are we right now? Who are we? I want you to take time to think about, who am I becoming? Not only who am I now in this current role, but where is this role taking me? Where is my next step in this growth phase? And I want you to really get it down on paper and take time to reflect on it. I'm doing this myself. I just put myself through this last week, still working through it. It is a much needed exercise, and I hope that you find the time to work through these today. Thank you for sharing this moment with me here on Mommy Needs a Minute. If today's episode gave you something to think about, something to feel, or something to gently carry into your own life, I'd love it if you shared it with a friend or left a quick review. Now remember, you are not alone in this. You are becoming, you are allowed to take your time, and you are doing so much better than you think. Now, until next time, take one deep breath, one small step, and I'll meet you here again real soon.